Welcome to the BioeconomyVentures CEO discussion, the podcast session where we will explore the remarkable journeys of visionary leaders who have not only launched but also scaled their bioeconomy startups to unprecedented heights. In our episodes, we invite successful entrepreneurs to share their unique experiences and valuable insights, offering a glimpse into a dynamic world of bioeconomy innovation. The bioeconomy, which is a rapidly evolving field, holds the promise of sustainable solutions to some of our planet's most pressing challenges, such as climate change and resource scarcity. It takes extraordinary vision, resilience, and strategic thinking to navigate this complex landscape successfully. Our podcast is dedicated to unraveling the secrets behind achievements with the belief that wisdom and experiences have the power to inspire and guide emerging entrepreneurs in their path to success. My name is Olivera Stojilović, Project Manager at Foodscale Hub and partner of the BioeconomyVentures project, a Horizon 2020 EU-funded initiative that aims to build a reference platform for bioeconomy-based startups and spin-offs seeking to gain access to finances, thus becoming the main meeting point in European bioeconomy. With me today is Katelijne Bekers, a co-founder and CEO of food tech startup MicroHarvest, in which she brings together her passion for fermentation, excitement for the future of the agri-food supply chain, and her intrinsic drive to change the world for the better. Hi, Kate. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the podcast session.
Hi, Olivia. It's a pleasure to be joining this podcast, and many thanks for the invite.
Perfect. So, Kate, I gave a brief introduction about, let's say, what you do and what drives you, but do you want to maybe share something valuable that I missed or highlight something that I wasn't able to summarize in this very brief, but of course, detailed little introduction?
Yeah, I think maybe what's interested and what really helped me in my journey is that I have a dual background. So I started out as biotechnologist. So I studied biotechnology back in the Netherlands at Wageningen University. But during my career, I moved to the business side, and then I also had the opportunity to do an executive MBA. And that really helps, because I think one of the things you really need is also understand the business side of things. So yeah, I think that helped me in my journey.
That's really interesting that you mentioned. So do you think that that was one of the key factors that actually contributed to the success of your business scale up and, of course, the successful launch of your venture? Or do you think there were other factors that help you, let's say, get to where you are right now?
I think there's a lot of factors that help me, and especially a lot of people that help me to get me where I am right now. But I think it's definitely good to understand. During an MBA, you learn about all the aspects of business. So that's very helpful if you need to be, as a CEO, suddenly deal with all aspects of business. The other thing is that the whole idea behind MicroHarvest started from a market perspective, more or less, because I was working in the B2B ingredients industry. And then you speak to people also about other ingredients and other products that they are dealing with. And then in the industry, you speak about alternative proteins because it's a hot topic. It's something that they are looking at. And what I heard a number of times is that they were looking for alternative proteins that are different from plant proteins, because they are good, but they also have some drawbacks in taste and in nutritional value. But they were struggling to get anything else at scale, because if you work B2B, so if you sell not directly to the market, but to the bigger customers that then sell to the market, you need big volumes. So it's difficult for them to have like tiny startups that can produce a little bit. They need big volumes. And this actually sort of gave me a light bulb, because I have the background in biotechnology, and I thought, oh, but you can produce biomass with a lot of very good protein, very fast and very efficient. So this is actually what was the birth of MicroHarvest. That's that connection. Yeah, in discussions with friends over beers, this grew out to be MicroHarvest. But that's what initiated it. Yes.
Very, very, very good note. So MicroHarvest was this initiative that started from your partnerships, let's say, in some kind of sense. So if you can briefly maybe introduce to our listeners, MicroHarvest's, let's say, idea. I didn't go through it, but you can start with this idea, and then how maybe your partnership helped you, let's say, refine the idea. And then if you can, maybe touch upon how partnership and actually collaboration helped you along the way.
Sure. So to start about MicroHarvest, so what we're focusing on is the problem that we need to feed the world, but already today 25% of our greenhouse gases are coming from producing our food. So we have a big problem there, and the problem is only getting bigger because we are projected to need more food. So especially if you look at protein, because of increasing population but also wealth, there's expected to be 50% more increase by 2050. So we need to work on how we produce our protein, because we need to produce all the protein, but we also need, as I always say, we need a planet to sit on to eat the protein. So we are focusing on producing very sustainable protein, and we really believe that biotechnology is the way to do that. Because in a bioreactor, you can produce it so efficiently. It's sort of vertical farming, right? You do it in a bioreactor. It's very controlled conditions. You can do it 24/7. You don't have seasons. You don't need to worry about soil quality. So it works very efficient. So this is what we do, and we do it doing biomass fermentation. So we produce single cell protein. So what we do, we use bacteria that we grow. So the same, we use bacteria already for a long time, also in our yogurt and in kimchi, etc. So it's a good source. But nowadays they are mainly used in foods to produce things that, change the flavor or the structure. But actually they are very efficient protein production facilities, I would say, the tiny ones. Because they can grow very fast, and they have often a very high protein content. So we use those, we grow them in bioreactors, and then we harvest them. So we harvest microbes. This is where the name. And then we use that as an ingredient for companies that want to produce feed, that want to produce pet food, or that want to produce food. Yeah, so that's what we're doing with MicroHarvest. And then a partnership. So I always have a very collaborative mindset, I think. I don't think I can do everything myself. I think I'm also not like the most brilliant scientist or the biggest out of the box thinker, or where my strength lies is like putting things together. And putting things and ideas together means also putting people together. So during my whole career, I've always been quite active in building up a good network. Also, the different jobs that I had really enabled that. And I'm really using that. And like the birth of MicroHarvest, this was like drinking beers with friends, with former colleagues, that are in the space, and that's helped to make this like little spark into something that could actually be. And they also helped me to get investors on board, to enable that I would have a space to start working at, because you need a lab as a startup. You cannot build it yourself. So from the very start, network has been very important to me. And also I have two amazing co-founders. One from my own network directly, and Luisa Cruz, who I already know for 13 years because we did a PhD together. And then also Jonathan Roberts, the other co-founder. So he came in really via network, via our investors. It was funny because he didn't know sort of what a fermentation process was before he started talking to me. That's a bit exaggerated, but because he comes from mechanical engineering, but he already had a startup before, so we had a lot of experience on that part, bringing in that side to it.
It's good. We often learn along the way. When we have common ideas and common visions, Definitely. We often are open to learning along the way.
Exactly. Yeah. So and I think speaking about network and partnerships and bringing people together, I think it's very good to bring people together also with different mindsets, because that really enables to look critically at what you do, and to evaluate, to learn, to challenge, and I think that's very, very important, and that's also key, especially in a startup, to really look critical at what you do. Test and try and challenge.
So you kind of mentioned this idea of building networks along your career. So what can be maybe an advice or an approach that new, let's say, entrepreneurs can maybe do to help build their network, help get those connections that do drive ideas and do drive businesses in a positive direction?
I think sometimes if entrepreneurs, especially if they come from a scientific background, very often what you see is that they're really scared that someone else will run off with their idea, right? Because of IP and because they don't want one of the big guys eating up their business, running away with it. So sometimes they're really not sharing a lot about it. But especially when you're doing a startup, you need to have a lot of feedback to really learn and iterate what's going to work, what's not going to work. So you need to be open to share what you're doing. So, get your IP in check in an early stage. Don't go at it alone. Get some help on that. Ask your network who's a good partner for that. It speeds you up. But then really share your ideas and then find the right platform to share your ideas. And that you can do, in conferences with investors, in your network. Try to test your story and test it both with your grandma and both, with someone in the industry. And also what I did in the very beginning, like in the first weeks that I started, I also just on LinkedIn, I contacted a bunch of people. Hey, do you have 20 minutes for me? Because I have an idea and I would really love your feedback. And there's so many people that are willing to have a conversation with you. Like also people that you thought they will never respond, but they do.
We often go with this mindset that people are not interested, but we don't realize that people are actually really interested to hear what you want to do and how you want to make a positive change. And that kind of brings me to a very important thing that you highlighted through this discussion is investors. So you mentioned that people do want to hear ideas, but investors are oftentimes, let's say, harder to reach. And you said that it's harder for scientists that come from a background, right, in pure science to communicate their ideas because of the IP issues and that barrier of the idea being stolen. So do you have any suggestions or what did you do to overcome that, let's say, initial fear or that barrier to approach investors?
So I think what works very well with investors is warm introductions, because investors, they get thousands of ideas sent at them, and they need to sort for them, and they also need to prioritize. So if they get it via someone that they know, it's already worth something like, oh, this could be good to look into because there's a reference. So it's always good to get references for introductions, and also there, two things. So with investors, you don't need to be that worried that they are going to run off with your IP because it's not their business. But also they have a reputation to uphold, right? They need to screen all these startups and their technologies and their ideas to make a decision who to invest in. And at the moment that they do something shady there, they lose their reputation and the startups don't want to talk to them anymore. So you can definitely always ask to set up an NDA. What you can often do is that you have a first conversation that you just open and just disclose what you want to disclose. And then in follow-up calls, sometimes they want to deep dive in the technology, of course, because they want to know more about it. But then it's really fine to ask for an NDA, especially in the biotechnology space. They know IP is important. They also ask you about your IP, so they know it's important, right? So then then the fact that you ask for an NDA, it can actually be a good sign because you don't just tell everything to everybody. So that's really fine to do. And then when you pitch to an investor, realize that you're doing a sales pitch. So technology is important, IP is important, but that's more the second, it's more important. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to make from it? How are you going to have impacts? And what's the business case behind it? Yeah.
So that's a very, very nice summary that you gave to us, right? Those are concrete directions that people can go, right? Be bold, be concrete, and of course, don't be scared to reach out. And I think our listeners are actually going to benefit from your concrete suggestions so far. But we've touched upon, let's say, our network, our base from where we start and how we can start. But now I want to hear maybe what was a significant obstacle, of course, because we do have many when we try to scale up our idea and then go through a certain direction. So what are maybe some obstacles that you encountered during your scaling process, during your idea development, and how did you successfully navigate them? Because one thing is to have obstacles, but the other complete spectrum is how do we actually navigate and overcome them?
Yes. Obstacles are what makes it fun, right? And
Exactly.
why you can do it and others not. So yeah. I think what's inherent to a biotech startup is that it takes some time to go to markets, right? Because you need to develop the process, you need to scale it. So it's not like a software company. I don't know about it, but maybe in a couple of months you build something and then you start getting your first customers in, and then you roll it out and then you scale. It's not what's going to happen. So a startup having revenue in biotech startup having revenues from day one, that's quite tricky. So you need to fundraise really, without revenues yet. So that's a challenge, of course, because it means there's a risk. And I think what's important is to find a smart way dealing with that and de-risking that. So if you have a biotech process and it's really, really novel, and you first need to develop technology for a couple of years, and then you need to scale up, and then you need to go to markets, this is a very long process. So then you would really first need to work with grants and things like that to get in that type of money to develop your technology to take those first steps. We didn't do that. Our technology is also quite different, I would say. But the cool thing is that the way that we approached it, the way that we approach the market and the technology, is that we first start not with the end game, but we start with sort of a pre-version. So what we start is
interesting.
Yeah. So because as I mentioned, we are aiming to produce alternative proteins, but the first product that we have is actually more a high value product for a smaller niche market, not these huge volumes in alternative proteins, but a high value for a niche market. And that allows us to to start going into the market in an earlier stage without being fully optimized yet. And which means you don't need to have all your raw materials of very low cost at scale to be able to go into the market. You can work with optimal bioreactor design already and go to, because you have enough space to play with such a high value product first.
Yeah, exactly. When you narrow down your idea, like you started to mention, it really helps you overcome obstacles that happen when you dilute or too much expand your idea.
Yeah, so they call this a beachhead market strategy. So if you want to, it's maybe a bit weird reference, but if you want to conquer a country, it's not the best time to explain this. But you can start by first entering at a beach, getting a settlement, learn and get your basis right, and then expand with your further products and further market. So this is what we're doing. So we go at it very pragmatically. So, not optimize first fully to be able to go into the market and have a business case there, but have a smart first step, which can speed that up, because that will allow you to already have a lot of learnings, de-risk, because you can show you can produce, you can show you can sell. You can also start building up a reputation in the market that you can produce, that you deliver quality, and that you have everything in order, right? Which is also an important aspect. And then from there, you can further build out. So that's the approach that we have taken.
That's really interesting, because you started mentioning your steps and you started going over what steps actually helped you prepare for potential barriers, right? You didn't really only focus on barriers that come as you go. You tried to successfully foresee what could potentially happen, how you can overcome those barriers. So that kind of leads me to ask a question that I think our listeners would be interested in to know, is that how do you actually make those strategic decisions, right? Because you have to have strategic decisions in a scaling up process. And of course, your team and your network and everything else plays a role. But as a leader, right, you have to know how to make those strategic decisions.
Yeah. So of course, I'm maybe a relatively late founder. I don't know.
It's never too late to succeed.
I'm 40 now, so no, the company's 2.5 years old. No, so I've seen, so in my career, I did research at university, then I started doing research in a company. After that, I worked in the pilot plant in Belgium, in Ghent.
Very right?
So I worked there. And then I started working in the B2B ingredients industry in Hamburg, in Germany. So I've seen all the different aspects, and especially because I've been working at the bio-based sugar pilot plant. The whole pilot plant is set up to to help scaling, because it's a very difficult thing, right? Because on one hand, if you want to develop a product, you want to have a customer that wants to buy it, but the customer first wants a lot of kilograms before they want to commit. And for that, you already need this facility that you want to build with the money that they commit. So that doesn't work. So they call this the valley of death, right? This is, quite cool, but it's really there. So this is exactly where a pilot plant jumps in, because you can hire all this equipment already so that, you can produce your first kilograms for the customers, or the first 100 kilograms, maybe 1,000 even.
A few boats, a few ships. Let's fill them out.
Yeah. Before you need to build your own setup. So I've seen all that. I've also seen the market side of things. So I know like the pitfalls in an industrial biotech process setup and bringing things to market and scaling and developing it. So that allowed me to decide, okay, if I'm going to I want to do large scale, big volumes, very high quality, tasteful, goods, nutritional value, alternative proteins for all the different markets. But I know that if I want to do that price competitive, I need to be at scale. So then okay, I need to find a way, something there in between. So it's really from experience that I decided to go this route, but also really asking a lot of people. As I said, when I started developing this idea, this is not like it comes there. No, you start just asking people in the market, people in product development of your customers, people in procurement. What do you need? How does it work? If I want to sell to you in the future, what do you need? When do you need which samples at which stage? So by understanding that, then you can start building your plan and build that in. And then, of course, for the execution, I had very good contacts in the piloting industry at bio-based pilot plants that were open to test the way that we produce, because it's a bit different than normal. That were brave enough to take that on. So that, of course, helps to do so.
So definitely what is important, right, for newcomers and of course already emerging startups is actually getting that real life experience, getting to know what you want to change in the sector that you want to change, and not just jumping on an idea and then hoping to God or to whoever, right, that your idea can scale up.
Yeah, and you can have that from your own experience, but also, you don't need to get it from your own experience. Just ask people that know it, right?
Exactly.
You don't need to know everything yourself. You need to realize what you don't know, or where you might not know things, and ask people that are the experts to help you out. I think
that actually can help you, right, build your network. That can actually help you build your team. That can build the people that you want around you. So we kind of circle back to the team, let's say, domain, but I think that's really important, right? And I want to know and of course it did, but how did your team help you overcome these challenges and actually help you grow? So we know that team is crucial, but how specifically did you see in your own experience leading this company? How did that team help achieve growth and trajectory and momentum?
So fully agree that team is very important. Also, I think from the whole MBA, the one thing I learned was people culture, and people culture, and then the rest comes after that. So very important. And so it's people in your culture. So I think what's very important is that you get people on your team that really fit working in a startup. I think that's very important, so that have the mindset of we don't want everything to be perfect, but we want to be fast, because this is what you can do as a startup, right? You can develop and implement at 100 times the speed that a big corporate can do it, and you can take bigger risk and take bigger challenges on. So you need to have people with that right mindset. And then with the talents, so in the very beginning, I was on my own, which I hated. And then our investor, they learned me how to recruit, which was an important step because you need to have the right process to find the right people to join you. And then my first hire was a scientist, but then what I specifically did is that the whole setup was that we wanted to not develop only a process and fully optimize that, but really focus on scaling it up, making it work and making some shortcuts there. Because we wanted to do the pragmatic thing, right? So when I hired my first scientist, I really got someone on board that already in his experience, was a very good scientist, but also had already scaled up a process before and made the steps to bringing that to market. So someone that understands this full picture and what it entails. So when you hire people, really think about, okay, what do you want them to do in the coming period? But also long term, what is their perspective to then do in the long term? So that works really well. For the rest on hiring, what I really think is very important is to have diversity in the team, because you want to be a startup, you're a technology startup, right? So you want to innovate and drive innovation. It doesn't work to have all bioprocess technologies with the same backgrounds, looking at the same present. There's not going to be a lot of innovation. You bring innovation if you bring people from very different areas, from very different geographies, from very different backgrounds and opinions, if you bring them together, because then they challenge each other and they inspire each other and they push each other forward. So that diversity aspect has always been important for me. So you also see that we have a very international team, and actually we haven't even been pushing to hire on that, but I think it's also by the way what you're doing and how you're doing, you get these people that enjoy that working together. So I think this diversity is very important, and this is also what you see in our co-founding team, is that we have very complementary profiles, one which doesn't come from biotechnology but from mechanical engineering, so really looking at processes from a different way. And I love that because it challenges what you're doing and it challenges really the status quo. So that's
which is really good, right?
important.
Having diverse backgrounds helping you out, always pitching new ideas, always, like you mentioned, challenging, and always trying to innovate through discussion. And we are, let's say, group beings, right? We are not uniform creatures. We like to be in collectives. We like to collaborate together, and then having that dynamic actually helps us achieve the ideas that are somewhere locked in our mind. So exactly. Now we covered that really important dynamic of how do you get your team, what is important in your team, and now, right, an important aspect of a business is, of course, revenue and funding and all of that. So when you were drafting your idea over beers, we're not going to mention how many beers, but when you were drafting your idea, did you have time to, and of course, after that, the beers and everything you probably did, but when we talk about business format, when did you have the time to do it? How did you get into that nitty-gritty part of developing your business format, and how did you align that with your goals?
I think it starts with your business format. In a startup, you can be a very passionate biotech scientist that wants to bring a technology to market. But what you're doing, if you're a startup, is you're building a business. So it starts with your business. So for me, you need to always focus on the business case and how you're going to make money in the end. This needs to be your end goal, and you need to understand your technology to understand, okay, how much space is there? How much do we need to optimize? Which markets can I play in where the value of my product actually fits the market? How can I increase the value of the product that the market wants to pay even more, right? So that's, for me, that's really at the start of your whole plan. And so it was also really from a market perspective and a business development perspective that we came out with sort of this beachhead strategy, like, okay, first we need to start smaller, higher value product, and then we can expand. So that's really, it should start, even though you want to have a new technology idea in biotech, a new product, a new technology, it starts with business. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. And now that you've mentioned, right, you started with a goal that you wanted to create a business, create something long lasting. So what was your, let's say, funding strategies, or what is your funding goal, and how do you see the business and of course your role within that domain of funding?
Yeah, so
Let's say, how do you plan to secure the necessary fundings for your business?
yeah. So it's very clear that we went with the venture capital route, right? I mean, there's different ways of doing a company. You can initially do a lot of grants. You can bootstrap, which is very difficult with a biotech company. I don't think anybody can bootstrap with a biotech company. But there's different way. And then also moving forward, even though you start out as a venture capital VC supported company, at some point you also can look at other ways of funding. So we really went to VC way. So up to now we've secured over 10 million euros.
Congratulations. Sorry to cut you, but congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And we were in a lucky position that we were really able to choose who we were working with. So we have one investor, Food Labs in Berlin, that really supported us from day -1, I always say. That is really well known in the space, has a huge network, really supports you to build up a company. And then for our Series A, we decided to go with lead investor Astanor together with Happiness Capital, and this is an impact fund. And for us that was very important because they support what we're doing also, like in mindset, because we really want to have built a very healthy, profitable business, but just as important is drive impact, drive sustainability, and make that change in the world that is needed, as I said, to have a planet to sit on to eat. Because those type of funds, they understand really what you're doing, and also they understand also the timelines of what you're doing, because that's very important. So this is our starting point, and then in the next round, so we've raised our Series A. Next year we will be raising our Series B after launching the first product on the market. So we build up our, we show that we pull it off, that the technology works, that we can produce, that we go to market, that we can build an awesome team. We're now 28 people, so that's pretty amazing. And then you can look, there's definitely venture capital money that's coming in, but you can also start looking at strategic partners to work with, which will help you maybe on the funding side, but also really developing your company. Because I always say you need to do what you're good at, right? And we are very good at the process, at developing the product. But there's of course your raw material side and the energy that you use. You can have partners helping you on that part, and also on the market side you can have partners, and they can be interested to be part of this future that you're building with partnership, and enable to go to market, but also money-wise. So that's also a possibility, and this can be also venture capital money or otherwise. And also, especially when you're a biotech company, I mean, we can use current day technologies, but at some point you want to optimize, and at some point you want to have a setup in a place which is perfect for you, with a setup which is really all for your process, that your business case is kick-ass strong. So at some point you really want capex, and their venture capital money is not, they're not too enthusiastic to invest in capex, because capex pays itself back in 20 years. And not
we don't want to go back, we want to go forward.
Yeah, exactly. So then you can also look at debt financing and those type of things. So there's different ways that you can finance that. Yeah.
So that's really good. You gave our listeners a really good overview of what routes they can take. And my question is, for you, what was, let's say, let's restate it again, but what for you was a route that you found that was mostly beneficial?
So for me, it was very beneficial to have our first investor, Food Labs, from the very start. Because yes, I'm a scientist, I understand biotechnology. Yes, I had the MBA and I knew the industry, but still I never built a company.
True.
And yeah, and then suddenly, you need to do accountancy, you need accountants, and you need legal and all kinds of aspects. So, they really helped me to move very fast on that, because it's just, okay, here, sign this contract, you have an accountant, sign this contract, you have a lawyer, these type of things. So they really help you. They help you with recruiting. So they really speed you up, because their business is knowing how to build a company and how to do it best, so that really enabled me. And also they had a very big network for investors. So I already mentioned in the very beginning, like, what's important is warm intros, and if you have the right investors on board, they can also really help you in the next rounds, because they can make these warm intros for you. And if you have a good investor, it's not just the company that you sell, but already that this high quality investor invested in you, and it can help you in the next rounds, because there's a reputation there.
Right, exactly. So it's the
that's
image that
really
you're trying to
helpful.
build. It's the
Definitely.
image that you're trying to build through your connections, through the investment. It's how you're trying to position yourself on the market.
Yeah, and for the rest, put up milestones and hit them. Work really, really hard. It also means that you need to put milestones that are very ambitious, because it needs to be ambitious. You need to put power, but also they need to be realistic. I think there's a it's the future, so you can never predict it, right? It's the future, and you can be very bold, but completely over promising, it's always going to bite you back. So on one hand, you need to be, you're going to conquer the world, and I really think MicroHarvest is going to conquer the world in protein. Fully convinced of that, but also be realistic that it's not going to be tomorrow or next year. So find that balance, and be bold and sell it. Yeah.
So it's always trying to fight that duality, right? Being realistic, but being ambitious, trying to find the best of both worlds, and then positioning yourself and everybody around you to meet those goals and visions. Very, very, very fruitful discussion. You gave us some very insightful things to think about, to process. My, let's say, final nudge in this discussion can be along the lines of course, what you want other viewers, or listeners, to get from this. So what is some advice for our audience that you can offer to any fellow bioeconomy startup that wants to scale up their business, wants to get into this kind of venture, and sees them sitting and doing the things that you do?
I think it's going back to people. As we both said, people is very important. So surround yourself with people that are better, that are smarter, you always think like, you can think like, okay, I'm the one that is doing this, and I need to lead this, but especially as a CEO, it's like the one thing you need to do is get people around you that are better than you, that can move it forward faster than you, and just help them to move it in the right direction, right? That you think that where it is. And that's with your direct colleagues, but also especially as a startup, right? You want to have experts in any range, but you cannot always afford that, because you have a certain amount of money. So what also really, really well for us is getting experts on board as part-time members, consultants as part-time members, because that way you don't have like full-time long-term commitments, but you do get this expertise in that can make you run and accelerate. And then that also worked for us. So don't be use the experts that are out there in the world to fire you on, and make you run even faster, I would say.
Make a coffee competition. Don't be scared of competition. Don't be scared of competing ideas, and don't be scared of challenging yourself, right? That's the idea. And I do have a bonus question, let's say, for our listeners, in your role as a woman. So we know that it's oftentimes many songs, many films write about this and then show this. It's a man's world, right? And how does your role as a woman position you, and how does it push you forward? And what is your, let's say, experience being as a CEO, as a founder, as somebody who is driving business? What was the space around it?
I always find it a hard question because I've never done it as a male, so it's a bit difficult
Yeah, of
to
course.
say how it impacts me. Yeah, no, I think there's a couple of things. I think the world it's changing, right? So yesterday I was at an event with a lot of investors, and it was really a lot of females. So I really loved it. So the space is changing, but I really think what you see is that very often men are much more bolder and much more, they see all the opportunities and they are gonna conquer. When I say we're gonna conquer the world, we're gonna, in no time. And while women, they are very, very realistic. So, and there needs to be a middle ground, which means that as a female, you need to be maybe bolder than you were sort of brought up to do, right? For me, it really helped to be in sales, to have worked in sales and learned there from very skilled guys how to do sales and how to push and how to bluff and how to, and how to present. Because, there's like, you need to realize some things is that because, normally it was male dominated, and the male dominated, they make the pitch decks, right? And then there's a projection of the business case. And then, investors, what they sometimes do is like, oh, we put a reducing factor on the revenues, and then we increase the cost. And if it then still works, then we go for this business case. But then as a female, if you make a realistic one, you never get through that check because they apply the same thing. So you need to understand how it works, how things are evaluated. So, check those sort of things. And another thing that I've read, and so I cannot compare, so I don't know if it happened to me or not, is what I've read is that if there's like conversations with female founders, the questions are much more towards what are the risks, while for male founders, there's much more questions about the opportunities. So there's, I think it's Harvard Business Review research about this, where they actually quantified this and looked at this, that's the case. So, having that in mind, if you go, what they also stress in the article, if you're as a female going into that, you get these risk questions, talk about the opportunities and twist it around. So I think what you need to do is just be aware of where you're at, stay yourself, don't pretend to be a male, and, be authentic, but just be aware of what's happening, how decks are reviewed, how interviews are done, and then do that. And then I think, I did it. I mean, we raised $1 million. I'm quite happy with that. And also, it has its benefits being a female, because everywhere they want panels with also females on stage. So, you get invited. So, also leverage it. Yeah.
That's amazing to hear that the space, we know that the space is changing, and we're seeing that the space is changing, and it's changing really fast. But of course, it's really important to hear these voices and elevate them, right? To know that the space, one side is to know that the space is changing. One side is to experience that the space is changed. So changing and changed are two different verbs, right? We are experiencing now that, and from your, let's say, hands-on views, right? You know that there is space for female founders. There is space for success, even though you have to adapt just your mindset. And we know that people who adapt succeed, right? And then we are seeing that actually does work.
Yeah. And there again, network with other female CEOs and exchange, because then you learn these things like, okay, oh, this is the approach I need to take home, So that really helps. Yeah.
So Kate, hopefully after this podcast, you're gonna have a lot of messages in your inboxes. We mentioned a lot of networking and connections, so
definitely.
Okay. So thank you for joining us, Kate, and thank you to all of our dear listeners right for following along as we dive into the stories, strategies, and lessons learned from brilliant bioeconomy leaders. Again, congratulations, Kate, to all of your successes, and we're hoping for many, many more. Through our discussions, we are unraveling the inspirations and knowledges that have fueled their remarkable journeys, and we hope that the wisdom and experiences that have been shared with you today left you inspired and equipped with all valuable insights. As you continue your entrepreneurial endeavors, remember to stay motivated, keep innovating, and together, let's shape a more sustainable and prosperous future. Until next time, this is Olivera signing off from BioeconomyVentures CEO Discussions. We are going to edit this very awkward moment of me.